Hello, hello. Welcome once again to the Verbally Effective Podcast with your host, your double E, Ina Esco. You know, this podcast intersects art, culture, politics, entertainment with a Memphis flair. That's right. I am talking to all of the amazing people that are either from Memphis or have ties to Memphis that have impacted the community here. Now, you guys know I need you to subscribe to the podcast. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and all streaming platforms. Let's jump right into it because I have one of my favorites. I'm fangirling right now.
Back at you.
Former news broadcasters, news anchors in the building with me. She was the queen of morning news here in Memphis, and she has totally flipped her life. She has a new reality show web series dropping very soon. It's in production right now. I am talking about the one, the only Marybeth Conley.
So good to see you, Ina.
Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
How are you?
I am great, and it's so good to see you. Remember
Yes,
in the
it
days
is.
of Water Cooler Wednesday back on Live at 9 on Channel 3?
I used to love coming there to chat.
It was a great show.
Specifically with you.
Of course. We kept it hot.
We kept it hot.
And then the
piping.
pandemic totally messed things up. But you know
Yes.
what? They might get back to it.
It looks
I'll
like
put
they're
good word
bringing
in.
people coming,
They're
bringing people back in the
they're
studio
starting
now.
to, so I'll put a good word in to revive Water Cooler Wednesday.
Hook me
that
up.
was that was my most favorite segment.
Look, a water cooler segment or a verbally effective segment.
There you go. They could change the whole name after
Come
all.
on, guys. I mean, it goes hand
Why
in
not?
hand. But you know what I have always loved about you, Marybeth?
There's no telling.
To me, you have always marched to the beat of your own drum. You were never afraid to ask the hard questions,
Or the uncomfortable questions.
the uncomfortable questions.
Well, you know, I never wanted to be in broadcasting. It was never, I didn't study it. I didn't pursue it. I look back on my 40 years in television.
40 years.
Yeah. And
That's
I
amazing.
tried to get out. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. I always enjoyed it, and it was always so easy for me. I mean, for those 20 years I did the 9 o'clock show, I literally would drive into the parking lot at 8:45 with my hair in a ponytail. It
Okay.
just was not ever work. to
Right,
me.
because it didn't feel like you were trying too hard.
No.
And
I just
and
talk
I
to
see
people.
people that try hard.
Yes, they're desperate to be on TV, and that's okay. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's great. If that's a dream, that's as good a dream as anything else. But it was never my dream, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why, because I have had many people tell me, you know, you said what I was thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and often it was not a politically correct or a it was, you know what, I used to ask the stupid questions or what seemed like stupid questions, because if you're not worried about how you look and your image, you don't need to look like the smartest person in the room. You ask genuine questions that you really are like, you know what, I don't understand that, explain it more. And viewers would tell me, I was wondering the same thing.
Right.
So I think sometimes if you want the dream of being on TV too much, you're more conscious of yourself than your guest,
Yes.
you know, and you're not natural. So anyway.
That's true. That's true. Well, let's start at the beginning. Marybeth Conley, where are you originally from?
Well, I was born in New Mexico, but my dad was a mining engineer, and we moved to Mascot, Tennessee, which it was back in the day. It was a company town. It was owned by the mine, where he worked for the mine, and so it's about 20 minutes outside Knoxville. Little tiny Mascot.
Tennessee.
It literally is named for the company, the mining company that formed the town, and it stands for Mining and Smelting Company of Tennessee.
Oh wow!
That's where
How was it? How was it growing up in a mining community? I've seen documentaries.
It was, for us, it was great because my dad was the head geologist.
Okay.
And so we lived in this little circle of houses that was set aside a little bit from the miners' homes. And the houses, it was like a country club by Appalachian standards.
Oh,
I mean, the
wow.
houses were like 1,200 square feet. They were not fancy houses, but we had a pool. We had our own basketball court. And because we were sort of segregated because we were management folks, the kids of the town would tell me their moms and dads wouldn't let them come play on what was called Snob Hill.
Snob Hill.
Right, because back in the 40s, they weren't allowed to. So when I was there in the 70s, the generational, there was still a generational thing, and they just were not allowed to come play. So we had this little pool all to ourselves, the 12 families that lived on this hill. But it was great. It was idyllic. We had our own basketball court. We had a baseball field. We had woods. It was beautiful. East Tennessee. It was a great place to grow up.
East Tennessee. Now, what was the young Marybeth Conley into,
Reading. I loved.
Escaping into the books.
I was very shy. Painfully shy.
Really?
Oh, painfully. My dad, when I actually started in broadcasting, was astonished that was something that I would do.
Wow.
I fell into it. I graduated from college in 1982 with a degree in advertising. I wanted to write ads at an ad agency.
Okay, advertising. Ads. I can see it.
Right. But in 82, there was a huge recession, so advertising agencies were not hiring. So I fell into the only job I could find, which was as a sales secretary for the CBS affiliate in Knoxville, WBIR at that time. I was the worst sales secretary in the history of sales secretaries.
Not you, Marybeth.
Oh, girlfriend. I am totally a creative, no administrative ability at all. But I was friendly, and they put up with me. But 3 months into that job, the station wanted to produce a telethon to combine to connect people who needed jobs in this recession with companies that had jobs. They called it a jobathon.
Okay.
And anyone who's ever worked in TV knows that no one in TV likes telethons. It's just the dirty secret.
Right.
It's horrible TV. It's not creative. So they were looking for someone to produce this jobathon, and no one would do it. Mm-hmm. And I was so desperate to stop being a sales secretary, I raised my hand and I said, I'll do it. I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I had never had a broadcasting course. I knew nothing about video. I knew nothing. But I figured, hey, learn on the job. And they, equally desperate, let me do it.
And how did the jobathon go?
It was a massive success. It was on a Sunday night. It was supposed to go for 2 hours. But people would not stop calling, and it went on for 4 hours. And at the end of it, the anchors wanted to bring me out and say, this is the person who put it together. Mm-hmm. And I ran and hid in a janitor's closet.
No,
I did not want to be on TV.
That was your debut.
I didn't want to be on TV.
Okay, you were still shy.
Oh, my gosh. I had no desire to be on TV.
Okay.
But from there, the news director thought that I had potential and asked me to produce a morning talk show. And then they wanted me to be on the morning talk show. And I was like, no, I don't want to be on TV. Mm-hmm. But somehow I ended up anchoring the morning talk show. And then I became a consumer reporter. And the rest is moved to Memphis when I got married. And they gave me a job at Channel 3. And I've been there ever since. I've never applied for a job other than at Channel 3.
Amazing. What made you move from Knoxville to Memphis?
I was dating and engaged to a newspaper reporter in Knoxville, and he got a job at the Memphis Commercial Appeal.
Okay.
So I remember it was June of 1985. I came here to visit him, and I was going to apply for some jobs in TV, logically. Mm-hmm. Looked at all the stations, and I said, well, if Channel 3 doesn't hire me, I'll just do something else. I really didn't care. Mm-hmm. So I went and applied at Channel 3, and they said, yep, we want to hire you as a consumer reporter. I said, that's great, but I can't start till September because I'm not getting married till the end of August. Mm-hmm. Now, you know how media is, right?
Yes.
They don't hold jobs for a little country girl with very little on her resume. They don't hold jobs for 3 months, but they did.
They did.
They said, okay, we'll wait.
Wow. They were very impressed, Marybeth.
See, here's the thing. But see, that doesn't happen in broadcasting, and that's why I know God needed me in broadcasting for what we're doing now.
That's true. That was just the beginning.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you this about broadcasting. How was it being a woman in broadcasting at the time that you got into it? Because, there are so many double standards with news, with radio, media in general, with, the things that we go through.
Well, there still are. Mm-hmm. You notice that men age better on TV.
They do. Why is that?
Well, for instance, when I retired last September, I just turned 63, and I knew that even if I did want to go back into a daily news job, there's no way a 63-year-old woman could start in a different market. A 63-year-old man could.
Definitely.
So there's still that, but I honestly, I'm really not the one to ask, because since I didn't ever want it, I just kind of floated along. And 3 months after I was here in Memphis as a reporter, I went into the news director. I found out that anchors made a little bit more than reporters. I was so ignorant about the business, I hadn't known that. And so I thought, well, I can anchor. I went into the news director's office and said, I'd like to anchor. This is not what you do.
Right.
And he actually initially said, you have less than a 40% chance of ever anchoring in Memphis. And I said, well, I want to. And a few weeks later, he called me up and said, okay, we're going to put you on the noon news with Pam Crittenden and Todd Demers.
Todd Demers. Hey, Todd.
Todd, my buddy. Also with Water Cooler Wednesday.
Yes. Alex.
Yeah, Alex. And so I started anchoring. Wow. And then I was on the 10 anchoring. And then I wanted to quit because I had 2 little babies at home. So I turned in my resignation. And they're like, no, what will you do? Can you do part-time? I said, okay, you have to take me off the 10. I want to work mornings only, 4 hours a day. I'll do that. Again, no one, and at that time, the 10 o'clock news was the primary big dog. Nobody leaves the 10 o'clock news to go to morning news. These days, morning's big.
But you were calling the shots.
I was calling, and that doesn't happen.
What worked for you?
That doesn't happen. See, and that's why I know it was God all along going, no, you need to stay in broadcasting. I got something for you to do later. And that's what we're doing now.
Oh, my.
So God's amazing. And I did not have a relationship with him until I was 50 years old.
Wow. Well, you know what? We're going to get all into this next chapter of your life, Marybeth. And we're going to bring hubby Rick along as well on this part 2 over here at Verbally Effective with Marybeth Conley. We're talking all things Flip My Life up next. Hey guys, welcome back to the Verbally Effective Podcast. I'm your host, Ina Esco. It's time for part 2 with Marybeth Conley and her hubby, Rick. We're talking all things Flip My Life. This is the new web series that her and Rick have developed. Marybeth and Rick, welcome to part 2.
Thank you.
I see you got your boo with you.
My boo, as our dear friend Reagan Oglesby calls him, my new boo.
Yeah.
Your new boo. Y'all look so in love. Tell me how you guys connected.
You want to start?
Because it's a story.
How we can know? You start. You tell it.
Because you've been knowing each other for a while.
I'll fill in.
You'll fill in, Rick.
It
Okay.
is a story. Well, let me just start with 8 months ago on the 50th anniversary of the day we met, or the first day in 8th grade in Mascot, Tennessee.
In Mascot.
We got married. 50 years to the day. So
Divine.
That's so much.
Yes.
But long story short, I was here in Memphis, of course, since 1985, working, and had 4 kids, and busy family, everything that everybody has. And in 2003, my family life started getting very chaotic. I won't go into all the problems, but it was very difficult. And having to be that chirpy, happy,
Morning
person.
Yes.
And I also had a radio show at the time, so I had 2 daily shows, and I had a new baby, and I just never had a moment to sit and figure out how I could fix what was wrong. I just kept going to the next deadline, and I was constantly pretending that you had your life together, right? So it was rough. And finally in 2009 is when I broke, and I reached for God, and I had no other place to go. I didn't even know he existed. But a friend of, not a friend, actually someone I met very randomly, she had left a very lucrative corporate career 20 years before to go into the mission field with her 3 children. I thought that was lunacy. And I was like, why would you do that? And she said, because God told me to. And the only place you'll have peace is if you're where God wants you to be. And I was so desperate for peace. And I said, how do I get that? And she said, well, you have to be in the Word. I did not know what that meant because I did not own the Bible at the time.
Okay.
I said, what does that mean? Well, you get up every morning an hour early and you sit with God, ask him what you want to know, ask him what you need, and open the Bible and start to read it. I'm like, okay. So the next morning I did that. and I opened the Bible on page 1. So 3 weeks later, I'm looking for direction in my life, and I'm in Numbers. And I'm kind of mad. I would use the term PO'd, but I don't think we should on podcasts. So can I say that on?
You're good.
Girl, I was pissed off at God because I thought I would see in the Bible, Marybeth, here's my purpose for you, and this is where you'll find peace. And I hadn't found it, and I was tired because I was getting up at 5 a.m. So my dad in East Tennessee was near death. He was in a hospice, and I got on a plane to come be by his side and say goodbye. And now, understand, I had all these children. I had 2 busy daily shows, doing a talk show. I was constantly on, and I had 1 hour on this flight to be by myself. No viewers, no family. I had my novel in my hand. I was going to escape, and the guy in the middle seat is talking to me, and I'm thinking, don't talk to him. But he's doing the whole what do you do thing, and he tells me I'm a pastor. I'm an itinerant pastor, and I travel from congregation to congregation to help them get into the Word. And I heard that phrase, and I said, I'm trying to do that, and it's not working. So we ended up having this hour-long conversation over the course of the flight, and he said, you need to start in the New Testament. Don't start at the first of the book, which I thought was crazy because you read a book at page 1, right? Well, not the Bible,
Not the Bible.
So he's like, you need to start in the New Testament. I want you to get this book called Sit, Walk, Stand. It's by Watchman Nee, who was a Christian in prison in China for being a Christian, and he wrote this book. It'll get you into Ephesians, and from there, God will tell you where to go. And I'm like, okay. So I get to Knoxville, and my dad dies, and because his death had been planned, we didn't have anything to do the next day. It wasn't, we just had an empty day. So I called this acquaintance of mine who lived in Knoxville, said, let's go have lunch. She knew nothing of my personal challenges. She knew nothing about my search for God. We were just very casual acquaintances. And we're sitting there at Panera Bread waiting for our food, just chit-chatting. And she suddenly reaches out and grabs my arm and says, oh, my God, I almost forgot. When we leave here, would you mind following me to Cedar Bluff Bookstore? Because the other day I was online buying books, and God told me to get you this book. And it came this morning. It'll save me mailing it to Memphis if you'll follow me there. It's called Sit, Walk, Stand. Have you ever heard of it?
Amazing.
Girl.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
You like, okay, God is working now.
That was the first time I knew there was a God and that he cared about me and that I could ask him anything. And from there, the next 6 years were just that hour in the morning I would spend with him was the only way I got through the day. It was like I used that hour to get to a peaceful place, and it shored me up because my family problems were getting worse. And I fell in love with him. I got addicted to it. So in 2015, I said, I'll do anything you want me to do. All I want to be is where you want me to be, and I'll have peace forever. And in my prayer journal, I found myself writing the words "flip my life," and I was developing a show idea where we would take abandoned houses in Memphis and renovate them for people trapped in generational poverty. And I was like, I want to do anything you want me to do, but do you remember that part about I don't want to do TV?
It's
and
a
so
different
I
form
argued
of
with
TV.
him. It is a different form, but I had no finances. I had no contacts. There was no way I could dive into something like that at that point in my life. So I was like, oh, no. We'll talk about this later. And I put him off for 3 years. I gave him every excuse in the book. And in the winter of 2018, the end of February, it came roaring back. It was like a presence in my head. It's time to do Flip My Life. But the houses are not just for people trapped in generational poverty. The houses need to go to people returning to Memphis from prison. And my reaction was, what the hell?
Where'd it come
That's not
from?
my thing. I had never thought about criminal justice. I'd never thought about incarceration. I was like, what? But the presence would not go away, and every morning it was pounding at me. And after about 2 weeks, I was like, you know what? That is a great concept for a show. I don't have any money. I don't know how to produce a show. I don't have the energy. I just can't. but it's a great concept.
Great concept.
So another week maybe went by. It was early March, and I finally said, fine. You know what? I'll shoot a pilot. I can figure out enough. I can figure out production folks who will do this for me for free. I can figure out a story. I can find an incarcerated individual. I can handle that. Mm-hmm. But I need a contractor with whom I have chemistry, because in the media, you're in the media. Chemistry is not something you can fake.
No, it's not.
Right? So I need a contractor with whom I have chemistry who would care about the issue of reentry. You figure that out and we'll get started. Mm-hmm. And the presents went away. This was March of 2018. And that Memorial Day of 2018, my family was going to go back to Mascot, my hometown. We were going to have my siblings and I, I'm one of 6 kids, and we were just going to have a little reunion. So we go. My daughter was 14 at the time, and she got kind of bored on Saturday because she's by far the youngest of the cousins. So I said, well, let's...
The cousin she was supposed to meet there
right.
and run around with couldn't be there.
Right. There's one cousin who's closer to her age, and she at the last minute couldn't go. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do with Abby? So she got bored, so I took her around my little neighborhood for a walk to show her where I grew up. And we passed the last house on the circle, and I said, oh, I used to walk around at night wishing this boy would come out. I had a big crush on him.
Oh,
girl, I did not even know I said his name, but apparently I did, because the next day we were driving somewhere, and she says, I found him.
Oh, Abby found him.
Yeah, I found him, and he's so old.
Oh, no, she did not.
She was looking for a 13-year-old boy.
I think she had in her mind, this was a 14-year-old boy, right?
Right.
And I said, what are you talking about? Because we had not had any conversation about, I wonder what he's doing now. I wish I knew. I said, what are you talking about? She hands me the phone, and it was Rick's Facebook page.
Rick.
Yeah.
And
59-year-old man.
I was like, is that really him? Because he shaves his head now. He had hair when he was 13.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Good
like,
hair.
wow. So I did not feel any romantic vibes. I didn't hear any birds chirping.
Not
any
from the
bells
Facebook.
ringing. Not from the Facebook. I was just looking at it. What I felt was curiosity, because 2018, if you remember back, was a time when it suddenly seemed okay, and in some parts of America promoted to be racist. Mm-hmm. The white nationalist movement was growing. Mexicans were being called rapists. It just was it broke my heart. And what I saw in Rick's Facebook page made me curious, because at that time he was a 59-year-old white guy who was raised in a part of the country where there's not a lot of diversity. Mm-hmm. And thus, it's not that East Tennessee is bigoted at all. It's that they're ignorant of systemic racism in America, because they don't see it, because there's just not a whole lot of diversity. And he was on a Harley, and I have my own prejudices. I guess I looked at this picture and I was like, this guy should be a disenfranchised white male, and yet in both his profile and cover shot, he was holding a little black girl. And I saw love, and I wanted to know how he stayed nice.
Okay.
So over the summer, I looked at his page a couple of times. I never friended him, and I don't know why, because we were friends. I looked at his page trying to figure out who this little girl was to him. And when we got close to August and the Charlottesville anniversary, the Charlottesville race riot. Well, it wasn't a race riot. It was a white nationalist rally at which a woman was killed. And I just had to know. So I messaged him, and I just said, hi, Rick. I didn't even know if he would get the message because we weren't Facebook friends. But I said, hi, Rick. I was in Mascot recently. Just wondered how you were. I thought, here's the reporter. I would open up a conversation with this old friend.
And emphasis on old.
Old
crush.
Very old friend.
Okay.
And I would work my way around to, who is this child and why do you love her? And in his message back to me, we were just catching up, and he said, oh, I always had the biggest crush on you. And girl, I
that
lost
was the response.
my mind. And I felt my heart explode.
Oh my God. That's how you felt, Marybeth?
I was sitting on my couch thinking, you are crazy. You don't know this person. You have not spoken to this person in 40 years. You have a family. What are you? But I felt like a 13-year-old girl.
I bet you did. Little butterflies.
So he said, look, I hate to text. Call me sometime. Let's catch up. And he gave me his number. So the next morning, instead of praying to God and spending my hour with God, sorry, God.
Trying to spend it with Rick.
I called him up and we talked for 3 hours.
Oh my, catching up.
And every day for 10 days.
That became a routine. Yeah, every morning.
I'd walk around the neighborhood and we'd talk and talk and talk.
Oh my. Rick, how did you feel when she hit you up on Facebook?
Well, we started talking. Well, first of all, I was like, I knew she was married. I knew she's in Memphis, but I didn't really know much more.
He thought I might be divorced because Conley was my maiden name.
I knew her as Marybeth Conley, but I knew she was married. So I was like, what's going on here? And I didn't want to be with a married woman. Or, you know what I mean?
But you were feeling some flutters.
But yeah, I was like, oh gosh,
You're
I
trying
had
to
feelings
find
for her.
out.
I remembered back in the 8th grade. I mean, she'd get out of that pool and walk back to her house, little light blue bikini bottoms, and my eyes followed her all the way to her
Rick.
house.
Okay.
I remember very, very clear.
Vividly.
How I wish I'd looked back.
Very clear.
Ooh,
And I was like, gosh, my mom and dad always loved her. My brothers, I mean, she was just a great girl, but she was just quiet.
Okay.
So I was like, hey. And at this same time, I had kind of lost my faith with God and was on the last foot. And I was like, God, I'm giving you this one last chance. Now, this is like 5 weeks earlier. I'm wanting to either remarry so I can build a house or not get married at all. It doesn't matter to me. I hadn't dated anybody in 8 years at this time. I'd given up on women. But I want to go forward with my life. So before I build a house or remodel a house for me, I want to do it for a wife or for me.
So
let me know, am I supposed to be married or not? Put someone in my life. And 5 weeks later, she calls. So I'm like, oh my God. Well, the more we talk.
Is this the one?
Yeah. The more we talk. She loves hot tea in the morning. She loves chocolate pudding, mashed potatoes, chicken, steak.
This is why you fell in love with me.
Biscuits. I'm saying, this is me.
Yeah, we
a life partner.
And all the talking that she couldn't do when we were in 8th grade, oh my God, the floodgates opened up.
Not shy anymore, Marybeth, huh?
We talked personal stuff.
Oh,
we could not believe what we could talk about.
I got down and dirty on that
10
time.
days later, we met
I said,
in
I have to
Nashville.
meet you. I have to meet you to
I'm like,
see.
oh, no. Because I was still married. My husband and I had been separated, still living in the same house, but we were, for about 18 months, we knew we were in trouble. We were working on it. And I told my husband I was talking to him. I didn't know. I just thought this was nostalgia for me. I couldn't understand. It made no sense. I kept telling myself, this makes no sense. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. I couldn't stop talking to him. And so we met in Nashville and had
I told her, I talked her into it. I said, look, let's meet in Nashville. Opryland Hotel's one of my favorite hotels. Just beautiful garden scenery and everything.
Let's go there.
Well, I show up and I'm waiting, and it took her 2.5 hours after she said she'd be there, and I'm kept thinking she gave up.
Well,
you was.
I had to stop at a gas station and fix myself.
Get her pretty set
Okay,
up.
I understand.
But when she stepped out of the car, I knew right then. I said, this is the woman for me.
Oh, wow.
And I told her. I said, look, we may never get married. We may never be together. You're either the one or I've got nobody. I put the pressure on her real quick.
Oh, my.
And I looked at her. I said, oh, my God, yeah. And I fell in love. I'd never been in love, really love. I was married for 21 years, divorced, then married for another 2.5, or really 1.5. And I realized I didn't know what love was until that day she walked in, got out of her car. It was a convertible Mercedes, but, it's a different story.
So this was day 10 after we'd started talking, and I just, when we left Nashville, we had not talked about the future, really.
Well, we stayed up 24 hours in the garden, talking the whole time. And then there was someone, we ate breakfast in the garden, and there was this couple that came up and recognized her from Memphis. You're Marybeth Conley.
Take a picture.
That was my first time seeing someone recognize her.
Because it would happen much more
weird.
going forward.
Oh, it does. Yes.
But anyway, so I get in my car to come back to Memphis, and I just burst into hysterical tears. I could not explain it. I'm not overly emotional, but I was a crying jag. And I had to stop for caffeine because we'd been up all night talking. So about 60 miles outside Nashville, I finally pulled into a convenience store, and I just sat out the convenience store, sat outside and fixed my face and caught my breath, and I said, Lord, I don't understand myself. Show me who I am. I didn't say show me what to do. I did not think I really could do anything. I really don't. I was like incoherent. So I said, show me who I am. And I walked into the convenience store smack dab into a display of pecans. All sorts of caramel pecans, salted pecans, plain pecans, roasted pecans, and the brand name was Mascot. And I stood there. I'd almost bumped into the display. I stood there, and I felt this immense sense of peace that came over me, and I knew what I was going to do. I can't explain it. I just said, okay. I got back in the car, and I spent the rest of the drive contemplating what it would be like to be divorced. And thinking about my children. 3 were adults, and 1 was 14. And I said, it'll be okay. We'll all be okay. I got to Memphis, and I texted Rick, this is your last chance to run the other direction because I know you're it for me. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. So I told my husband the next day what had happened. I told him, I had already told him that Rick and I had reconnected, but I didn't tell him how I was feeling about that reconnection because I really thought it was nostalgia. So I told my husband that this time we were going to stop working on it and that I'd inadvertently opened a door that I just was not going to be able to close.
Was it hard for you to tell your then husband?
No, I knew. I felt so, and that's very weird for me because I am an overthinker extraordinaire. I make pro-con lists. I overanalyze.
She's made several.
There was never any doubt. I never questioned it. We were about to celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And we had never fought. The problem was between us, but we had grown so distant. So on the outside, we looked like we had a very stable and healthy marriage, when in fact we were very far apart. But no, and he understood completely. And he said, this is the right thing to do.
Oh, wow.
This is the most amicable divorce ever. In fact, we lived together after we were divorced. We thought that was better for our daughter for about a year. Anyway, long story short, it was after I told my husband, and he said, you're right. This is the right thing to do. In my prayer time the next morning, it was as if God said, so, what you going to do now? Because you see, in that very first phone conversation with Rick, we caught up on each other's 40 years worth of life that we had not known each other. And he told me that he'd been a contractor since the early 90s.
The contractor.
And then he told me about the day, as he put it, in 2008 when he lost his mind.
Is that where I come in?
That's where you come in. It's your part.
Yeah, well, I'm a contractor, had a lot of work. 2008, the economy's going down. People are losing their jobs.
Remember the housing crisis?
The housing crisis. And people started calling. I'd collect money and hold jobs. Pretty much, I was booked out 6 to 8 months. They'd write me a check. I wouldn't see him for 6 to 8 months.
While he was working.
But I was working all these other jobs. So it was a retainer. Anyway, I started returning the money to these people. I didn't have to. My contract said it. But anyway.
They felt like they couldn't afford their
I
work
turned
anymore.
around. I was losing everything.
Wow.
I'd given all the money out. No new jobs were coming in. My daughter was in college. I was trying to help her out. There's a lot of situation going on. But anyway, lost my mind and thought, I'll go rob a bank.
What?
And I realized I'm not a very good bank robber.
What happened, Rick?
As I was in prison, that was the biggest joke to all the prisoners. They wanted me to retell this story of me robbing the bank because in some ways it's sad, but in other ways it's hilarious.
The teller testified he was the nicest bank robber she'd ever encountered.
Rick.
It's very, very sad.
He had an unloaded BB gun.
Unloaded BB gun. But through all of that, what happened, and it changed my life. I wouldn't give it, I wished I'd never done it, but I'm glad. And it's funny to say because it changed my life and my perspective on how people are treated through sentencing, how people judge you afterwards, and how hard it is for some people to come back and get jobs.
True.
And to start a life over. I didn't have to face a lot of that. They let me out for almost 4 months. In between, I had no bond. They let me out before I actually was going in to plead guilty to finish a few jobs so my customers that I did have could
Have the job
feel
finished.
made whole,
Yeah.
the jobs. They allowed me to see my daughter graduate from college. I drove all over East Tennessee. No problem, with no bond or anything.
So how often do you think a bank robber is allowed out without bond?
Exactly. I'm like, they let you do that?
And I was sentenced. I pled guilty. I was sentenced to, and it was a violent act.
Even though the BB gun
The
was
BB
unloaded.
gun was unloaded, but it was not a true firearm, so they counted it under violence. So I was sentenced supposedly a little harsher, but not harsh enough. I got 42 months, and I did 31. And I'm shipped out finally to Texas for 2 years. And I'm out there with people of color, marijuana charges for 20 years. Things that I felt so guilty over my sentencing, which I should have been tickled to death and happy, and I was. I'm not offering to do 12, 13 years, but I just didn't see, it wasn't right. And then afterwards, I do my time. They give me 5 months halfway house, and I spend 3-4 weeks in the halfway house, and they let me go live with my mom and dad. I had to have a job. Well, I had people that waited 3 years for me.
So he never
on
had
my
to check a
business.
box.
I didn't have to go find a job somewhere else. I had work already waiting. Now, I can't vote. I can't carry a firearm. I never cared about carrying a firearm anyway. I'd love to be able to vote. But for all sense and purposes, it's never affected my life.
Right.
And I know that's not the fact with so many people.
True.
And I hate to keep saying people of color, but really,
It is
it's
what
sad.
it is.
Yes. And I saw my privilege, and I hate to harp on that, but I saw it. And it is so hard for even people in my family to see it.
Gotcha.
So,
Wow.
So he was
my
telling...
biggest problem was, and I get teary-eyed because my biggest regret was I did scare some people when I robbed the bank. And that played a big part too, So that's what gets me.
So he was telling me in that conversation about how it had helped him. It had opened his eyes to the way our country does criminal justice in ways that are often inequitable, to the challenges that people who he discovered while in were good people who had screwed up.
Yeah.
Made
a mistake.
Yeah.
Right. And wanted to get back. But if you have all these hurdles and barriers in your way. Anyway, so he's telling me all this in our first conversation, completely over my head, until after I'd talked with my husband about it. And he said, yeah, we need to divorce. You need to go this way. And in my next prayer time, it was as if God said, so 6 months ago, you told me you needed a contractor with whom you have chemistry who would care about reentry.
And chemistry.
What are you going to do now?
amazing?
Yeah.
And so I called Rick up and I said, how do you feel about being on TV?
What do you
And he
think?
said,
I
huh?
don't. Oh, yeah, I'm not into the reality shows of ours, houses and stuff, because I think there's a lot of
The renovation.
the goofy part of it.
Well, you're starring in one
Yeah,
now,
well.
Rick. You're starring.
But while it's a renovation show, it's really a show about people, because the renovation aspect of it is the flip is going to be fun. This house is an amazing house. It will be 6 bedrooms, 4.5
Wow.
baths, so it will serve 6 returning citizens. But we're going to tell their stories.
Yes.
The electrician subcontractor we've hired spent how many years in prison?
Well, he was in for 25. He was a kingpin. And
He's a
I'll,
kingpin.
hopefully one day we'll have him tell his story.
He was on a RICO charge, so he was a big bad dude. He makes Rick look like the kindergartner of criminals, and he's like a master's degree. But he learned the electrician skills in prison, and he came out. He started a company. He's built an enormous company. And he's a pastor. He's dedicating a portion of his church to a training center.
Wow.
He hires ex-cons. So we're going to profile him because we want to tell the stories of new returning citizens and the hurdles they face, sure, and the things they're doing to get back. They have to be held accountable. They have to want redemption.
Okay.
But we also want to tell the stories of folks who the public's not afraid of. I'm using finger quotes, right? Substantial business people, people you'd see at parties, who also were ex-cons.
You wouldn't even realize what they've done.
You know, DeAndre Brown, who's the director of the Shelby County Office of Reentry, is a felon. Nicest guy in the world.
Yes.
Who screwed up. But haven't we all?
Haven't we all? We went to Lemoyne College together.
Did you with DeAndre?
Yes.
Oh,
He's
cool.
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
He
mean,
looks older than you.
Oh, yeah. A lot older, DeAndre.
That's why I was like, what?
A lot older.
well, I mean, it's amazing that, how the parallels to your broadcasting career has,
That's why
changed the
God-
trajectory of your life.
That's why God
And God,
needed
of
to
course.
keep me in broadcasting.
Yes.
And that's why Rick and I both had accidental careers because he taught himself construction.
Wow.
It was not something that he graduated from college
Yeah.
in
I
architecture.
never went to
or
college.
anything.
Didn't want to.
He just began building decks and grew this business of 30 years. He's won awards. And I, totally accidental broadcasting career. So God knew all along what he wanted us to do. So
for
the
sure.
show is called Flip My Life. We have a website, flipmylifetv.com. We're piecing together funding. We do have a GoFundMe, but we're so terrible about asking. It's
Go ahead.
You
have
can
a
find it on
problem
our
there.
website that we really have raised we haven't even put it out there, and I think we have raised $500. But the
it's
county
sad.
commission has given us a little bit. We're going to go to the city council, TVA, Tennessee Valley
It's helped out a
Authority.
lot.
Helped out a lot. They're doing their windows and doors and heating and air, the energy related work, because this house
I know
is
that
gonna
helps
be
out.
state of the art. But we're just prayerfully,
It's our
we
retirement.
could use your help. We're funding a lot of it right now with our 401k.
Gotcha.
But here's the thing. I've been financially insecure my entire life. It's a thing with me. But what I know to be true is that our security is not in our 401k.
True.
So if we spend it all on this, that's okay, because this is God's concept, this is God's show, and this is what we're supposed to do. And we just would appreciate sharing the word and getting it out there, because I don't know how to grow an audience. I had the promotion
Marybeth-
department of Channel 3
The
growing
good thing
the
is
audience.
her name recognition is big time.
Yes,
and I've learned
indeed.
that. I've really learned that.
I do
Indeed,
not
keep
feel
posting
confident.
on socials. It's
We
okay.
will.
I feel like that often too, Marybeth. But guess what? Consistency is key with that social media game.
I'll share yours if you'll share mine.
I will
We
say-
have an Instagram page, which we have not put anything on. I'm so bad at Instagram.
Everything
I
on
promise I'll
Facebook,
get
put it on
better.
Instagram.
I know. I keep hearing that.
Well, I will say every time we get a little discouraged, something goes wrong, or it's not moving like some part of the build is not moving as fast as I'm used to or whatever, it never fails. We meet someone down here with the story
See?
that it's like, oh my God, our electrician, Roderick. I mean, and the guy that's helping him has become a master electrician, so he's going to be the main crew guy. But it's like every time.
Who's also an ex-con.
The guys, the young guys at Lifeline to Success that have come over and helped gut this house, saying they want to do better for their kids. It's like, oh my God.
And
it's,
they're great guys.
I mean, wonderful. So there's always inspiration to always build us up when we're down.
Yes, that's
So.
true. I think this is such an amazing concept. And everything that you all have been praying for has come to life.
Yeah,
I got
doors
the
have
woman of my
opened.
dreams.
Yes,
And
yes.
if I'd have gotten her when she was 8th grade, she'd turned around when she was walking down that little skimpy bathing suit, we might not be doing this.
Right.
So
That's
we
true.
know, and I wouldn't have my daughter. She wouldn't have her kids. And so it would have, our lives would have been completely different. So now we go, God pulled us apart,
I would
for a
never
reason.
have moved to Memphis and fallen in love with Memphis.
Yes.
We still would have been in that lovely East Tennessee bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't
not
have a little
bad
Fallon
people,
in our life. I mean,
but we wouldn't. Yeah, we wouldn't have Memphis.
It's
And
amazing.
We love Memphis.
And you guys are stuck like glue over here, baby. Like
Well,
the energy.
When you wait 50 years for it, believe me, you enjoy every minute of it.
what's this slowing down after 50?
That's not true. It's no slowing down over here. I tell you that. Now, I do have a question about Flip My Life. You guys are still currently in production.
Yes, we are.
So, what does a typical day of production look like?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's so many moving parts. The house is 2,600 square feet. So Rick is in charge of the construction aspect of it, but I have to coordinate when, like for instance, we've hooked up with a great company. It's a nonprofit, national nonprofit called Center for Employment Opportunities, or CEO, and they hire returning citizens, ex-cons, and train them in the construction trade and landscaping trade. They have a Memphis office. So they are providing us free labor through the end of June.
We've not started using it yet, but we're planning on it.
Okay.
So one of the jobs this week while we were in production was we were going to take out, do bobcatting work. And they were going to do it, and we were going to film them and interview some of the guys. And the only day they could do it was Friday, and yesterday was rainy.
Pouring down rain.
It was horrible.
And we couldn't find a
Horrible.
bobcat.
We couldn't find a bobcat. So the construction goes one way, but we have to coordinate it with the production, which often goes another way. Hopefully the weather will be good.
Getting
So
the Lifeline
I
Success
kind of have to
Cruise.
coordinate that, right? We have to. So that's been a challenge. But the typical day on site is Rick decides, is today going to be framing? It took us 3 months working with a crew of about 7 Lifeline to Success
3 to 7
students, all of whom are returning citizens, just to demolish the house because every wire, every nail. What am I doing?
I want to show something.
Oh,
She gets
I'm
in.
a walking.
This woman, now TV personalities supposedly don't do anything. They're pretty faces and all. This woman gets in. She's crawling and underneath the house, on top of the house, pulling out wet insulation with rat dew in it.
You should have seen me Thursday.
Okay,
afternoon.
you working.
Beating
You on the
She was out in the
construction
rain
site.
yesterday.
I'm a demolition queen.
And she works as hard as any guy. They will tell you she works harder than I do. She makes me look lazy.
That's not true.
But she's tearing it. Yes, every time I want to stop, you make me keep working. But she's getting dirty.
I do.
Down and dirty.
Down and dirty. And she can do it both ways, but we'll talk about this construction.
Well,
right now.
wait a minute. She can do it
We'll talk
both
about
ways. It's
construction
out
right
here,
now.
Rick.
Supposed to
It's
be
out here, Rick.
G-rated.
Oh, I'm
No, we a
sorry.
little R sometimes. We a little R
When I
sometimes.
script
So getting X. Whew, I'm starting to blush.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a typical day, I mean, we will work all day, and we have a crew of 3 producing it. Boom Kane Creative is phenomenal.
Yes.
The good thing about it is they're all news photographers or former news
They've known Marybeth.
They
stepped right
like my
in.
sons. Yeah, and
That's awesome.
as you know from a news perspective, broadcast perspective, when you work in news as a videographer, you get it and you go. There's none of this setting up 85 lights. You know how to light beautifully with a few lights.
Yeah.
You know how to work a situation where it's very efficient. So very streamlined. So that's a blessing. And they're just on site with us. They follow us. We have an enormous amount of footage. The editing will probably be a nightmare because we have so much footage.
And some of that is my fault because I don't know how to do TV, so I kind of do a lot of bloopers and say a lot of things I shouldn't say.
We need some of that in the
He'll be the
final
blooper
piece.
reel.
There's been some times it's like we can't do that.
But we've had so many people reach out. We're going to have a volunteer day. We would love to put a paintbrush in your hand.
Yes, I would love to
Ma'am.
help. I would love to
We're
help.
going to have a volunteer day for painting.
Okay.
And we've connected with the University of Memphis Architecture School.
Okay.
And because we're changing the front of the house, I don't want to give too much away, because the owners of the house, Lifeline to Success, they're on orders to not come by the house.
Okay.
It's less than a mile from their office. but we want the reveal to be a total
That's
surprise.
going to be nice.
So the front of the house is going to be totally different. And so we're asking some architecture students to come out and brainstorm with us. Rick has wonderful design ideas. What he can do with a space, how he carved out 6 bedrooms that are good-sized bedrooms in this house is amazing. Because it was a 4-bed, 2.5 bath, and it's going to a 6-bed, 4.5 bath without having to add an addition.
Oh,
He's managed to
wow.
carve
He
it
know
out.
how to do it.
So, but the front of the house, he could design it totally. But we want this to be a Memphis project. So we're having these students come out. We're going to shoot them, brainstorm with them, talk to them about criminal justice reform and restorative justice, and what it would look like to the whole community if we could help people by giving them an off-ramp from crime into a productive, positive place where they then become tax-paying citizens, they become healthy parents to their children, and we stop this generational curse. And that's the reason for the program. We want to help people understand that if we practice restorative justice, it's good for all of us.
That is true.
The other thing is, and I
That's
don't mean to
true.
take up time, but putting a transition house in a neighborhood, sometimes you have hurt feelings. People say, I don't want that.
Right.
And I told the Mayor Lee Harris yesterday, I want this house to be the jewel of the neighborhood.
Okay.
And Lifeline to Success has a habit of going out and providing free days, Saturdays, spruce up the neighborhood day. So these guys are going to be coming out working in that neighborhood, sprucing it up. And I want those neighbors to say, we've got the best house, and that's a transition house.
And the
People,
neighbors,
you all need one in yours.
yeah,
you
the
know.
neighbors have gotten to the point where they watch it. They
watch
make
them for
sure
us.
they come over and tell us if somebody's been casing the joint, you know.
We've had someone try
They're
to
very
steal some stuff, and they've
Oh,
told
they
us.
do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
they're very protective.
Can you reveal what part of Memphis
It's
you're
in
in?
Fraser.
It's
in
in
Fraser.
Fraser.
And we hope that next year we want to do a second season. If we don't go broke doing this
Yeah.
one, we will be back. We
Oh,
want
no,
to,
no.
we
You
wanna
guys are
build
gonna
But
be
we would like
flooded
to
with
hit
support.
all. We would like, I mean,
Yeah.
we'd like-
all areas.
And there's a
because-
lot of development going on in Fraser. Fraser is
Fraser
kind of
is
like
booming.
ahead of the
Yes.
game in this.
Yes. So, you know, if you're a CDC in Whitehaven, if you're a CDC in Orange Mound, if you're a CDC in Hickory Hill, hit us up. We want, we told the mayor yesterday, we want to make this an ongoing concern. Memphis is our town.
Yes.
We live part-time in East Tennessee and part-time in your old stomping grounds, Meeman Shelby Forest, in a
Okay.
little 8x10 camper.
Okay.
Good thing we're honeymooners.
we're saving money.
Y'all still
Yeah,
honeymooning out
because
Just
here.
enough
we're not going to
room.
spend any money on us. No, the camper doesn't even have water, y'all.
Oh, wow.
Well, it did have water, but then the water
Something
pipe
broke. We
but
just
it's
hadn't had a chance
okay.
to
We
fix
don't
it.
care. We're
You guys
loving
look
it.
so happy.
We are so happy. We
I
have so
can
much fun in
tell.
our
I
little
feel the
camper at night.
energy.
Have
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing.
Flip my life.
Flip my life. God flipped ours.
That's right.
What Mayor Lee Harris had to say about this whole project?
He loves it. He loves the concept. You know, he's very supportive of restorative justice.
Yes.
And he initiated the Ban the Box. And we talked about that with him. They have hired so many former felons that they're actually going to have I may be getting ahead of myself. Sorry, Mayor Harris. But they're going to have a luncheon this summer celebrating all the hires in Shelby County who have felonies on their record, to showcase that these are folks who want to be productive and want to be positive, but want a living wage to support their families.
Yes.
And think about the little babies who will be healthier if their daddy or mommy is able to be productive and positive.
I want
That
you
is
to
so
mention,
true, Mary
our
Beth.
sponsor from the council,
Oh my gosh, Erica Sugarman.
Erica Sugarman.
Sugarman
came
I'm
out
telling you,
from the Shelby County
she
Commission.
loved her to death. She came out, saw what we were doing
Gave us
before we
$10,000
were still tearing it
herself.
out. But she sponsored us in front of council and
That's amazing.
Commission.
I'm sorry, I
He's
get
not
confused.
used to the municipal.
Right.
You know,
But-
Memphis a little
Yeah.
different.
So thankful for her because
Yes.
you know,
And
and this
also
is not
to,
her area.
to Mick Wright. That's right. These are not their
It was
districts.
not her district, but
Mick
she was
Wright,
like, "This needs to be done."
Mikkel Lowry,
Yes.
Mikhail.
and Amber Mills. They gave us money from their community
J.B.
funds.
Smiley, is that?
Councilman
He
J.B.
came
Smiley,
out.
Vice Chair,
He
came out.
gave us a lot of great
and
advice.
Michael and Easter Thomas. So
Yes.
shout out to
Okay,
you.
the whole crew.
Well,
Jim
they
Strickland came out.
give-
Steve Mulroy. We keep inviting. That's one thing a
invite.
reporter can do. I'll bug you to death before you
and they'll come.
finally show
They'll
up.
come.
and they've all
So,
been very positive. And that's, just make it a big Memphis thing.
So if anybody out there is with Lowe's or Home Depot, we would love some drywall.
Need some
It
drywall.
keeps me up at night, the
Some
amount of
drywall.
drywall we will need for this house.
Now, when are we going to be able to see Flip My Life, and on what platform?
Well, we will be finished with the house in September, and then the editing process will begin. And I predict we'll be ready to debut it by the end of October, maybe November of this year. It'll probably be a 6-part web series, but we're getting so much stuff
I'm
as
thinking
doors
10
open.
part.
Yeah, the good part of a web series is you have a little flexibility. So as we come across people like our fabulous electrician, Roderick, and Chris, his master electrician, we find these stories that we
So
want to
many
tell.
stories to
Yeah.
tell.
It may be longer, but we are planning to have a red carpet debut.
Okay, I'll be there.
Shout out to my girl Karen at Malco. We've talked about it, and I'm hoping that
Don't
we can
forget.
do it at a Malco.
Don't forget.
Shout out. She's awesome. So be looking for that invitation. We're
Yes.
going to put it on YouTube, and I guess I'll have to call you up and get some information about how to do this platform thing. Because,
Yes.
girl, I don't know how to do this. Remember that whole
Okay.
part about how I argued with God for 3 years and
Yes.
said, I don't know how to do this.
Yes, but look, you know how to post on Facebook, right?
I do know how to post on
Well,
Facebook.
it depends. We think we do, but our kids tell us we don't.
Yeah,
You do.
very
Marybeth, I follow
embarrassed.
you. You do.
Very
We'll talk.
embarrassed.
We'll talk. I can
Thank
help you out.
I could use some advice because
Yes.
we don't know. I'm literally daily saying, God, this was your idea. Need you to open the right doors to show me what I don't know, because I don't know a lot.
Yes.
But he's
wow.
done that so far, and he's with you, our
Yes.
friendship that we formed for years, and your fabulous podcast, and here we are being able to
Yeah,
share our story.
here.
So thank you.
And thank you for blessing my audience with this amazing story, because I think this affects so many of us. Like we've had family members that have gone to jail for making a mistake and just trying to get their life back together. And you guys are helping these individuals with that. So
If they're willing to do the work on themselves and the
willing to
work to
help.
get back, we're willing to help.
yes.
I just want everybody to remember how much, God loves you and knows you. And if you just open that relationship, it changed my life doing that.
Yes, it has. In such an amazing way. You have, gotten with the love of your life.
Well, think about it. When I asked for a contractor who'd care about reentry, how many of those do you think there are in Memphis, right?
Right.
He could have introduced me to any number of contractors, but God knew he needed to fix me first.
Yes,
I would
and that's
not
where
have
it
been
starts.
equipped to do it
Yes.
without someone like Rick.
And
as
just
partner.
quick, I thought while I was out in Texas in prison, I think he set me up with a Memphis connection right off,
Okay.
because I met a guy out there, William Bedford, that played for Memphis State.
Wow.
You remember that
All-American,
name?
all,
Who could
and we
forget?
became friends in prison. And he was a big Memphis guy. I told him to go back home to Memphis and teach coach basketball, but that was before this came along. So I'm looking for a reconnection.
So shout out to, what did they call him in prison?
7-1.
Shout out to
7-1.
7-1.
Shout out.
7-1.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry,
Wow.
we can go on.
No,
and on,
you
as
guys
can
are
tell.
amazing, and I want to thank you for coming to the Verbally Effective podcast. It's an amazing story that is even still developing,
Yep.
and people can definitely tap into it, connect with it, and even support what you guys are doing. Please share the website one more time so they can connect with you.
FlipMyLifeTV.com.
Yes, and we'll be looking forward to the premiere. I'm coming to the Malco. I'm going to help
Great.
with the social media platforms. And it was
such a
such a
sweetheart.
pleasure meeting you, Rick.
Thank you. Very
and you
nice
got my
meeting
girl
you.
all happy.
You
Yes.
is beautiful, as Mary Beth said you were.
Thank you so
And
much.
you
I
are.
appreciate that. I really do.
There's no way you're even close to DeAndre Brown's age. No way.
Maybe not, but we did attend LOC together, and I'm so proud of the work that he's done with restorative
Yes.
justice. And Memphis, we deal with so much with what's happening with the systematic issues, with politics, with crime, with just the system in general. It wasn't really made for somebody that's that looked like me, just to be honest.
Many times it was not.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yes,
Marybeth,
sir.
I appreciate you always for speaking out against it, and trying to change the narrative.
It's important.
It is.
Well, what would
people
Jesus
need
do?
to know is Marybeth that you've watched on TV for 38 years is the same Marybeth
She
she was in
is.
8th grade, although she talks a lot more.
Oh, in the 8th grade.
But the way she acts is the way she is.
Just a
so she's not a
knucklehead.
makeup.
Just a knucklehead.
Yeah, a knucklehead. But you're
Anyone
my
you guys
knucklehead.
want to shout out with your crew before we come to a close?
Oh, I'd love to. Chris, Tim, Michael, y'all are the
Thank you.
bomb with Boom Cane Creative. They are
Yes.
phenomenal. You need video work?
Boom Cane Creative.
Antonio
Creative.
Abrams, thank you.
And that came from the first shoot we were on. They made a boom mic out of a cane that we found in the old house.
Oh, they
we
know
were
what they
shooting our
doing then.
pilot.
They know what they doing, Marybeth.
They
Wow.
do. We will
Okay.
improvise if we don't have the
Yes.
equipment.
Yes, well, we're going to continue to follow you guys' journey with Flip My Life. I'm so excited to see where this goes and the final results after editing.
Thank you.
It's going to be good, though, because
Thank you.
God
So-
is in the midst of all of it.
God's in the house.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick and Marybeth Conley, for joining me today on Verbally Effective Podcast. I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you all for tuning in yet again to another episode of the podcast that intersects art, culture, politics, entertainment with a Memphis flair. Big shout outs to Rick and Marybeth Conley for joining me today. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on all social media platforms. See you all next week.
This is the Spotlight Podcast Network.